Good evening, and welcome to PSEG's Social Impact Film Series, Standing in Solidarity. My name is Donna Walker-Kuhn. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm Senior Advisor, Social Impact here at NJPACT. This evening, we are thrilled to explore a very important topic, transitions of multi-generational immigrant communities. The PSEG's Social Impact Film is Immigration, Love Me, and Finding Home, which was sent to you. The link was sent to you in advance of tonight, and I hope you've had an opportunity to take a look. This panel will discuss social justice issues in the Ironbound and beyond, of course, in Newark and some of our other towns. We're going to focus on various communities within the Hispanic culture. This social justice series is part of our Standing in Solidarity initiative. The purpose of this series is to bring our community together and to encourage everyone to take part in the movement to ensure civil rights for all. On our website, you can find archived prior social justice panel discussions, as well as resources that will help you to take action. We're also really happy to have as our advisors the Newark NAACP, the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice, Newark Arts, the Africana Institute at Essex County College, Asian American Arts Alliance, ACLU New Jersey, and our newest advisors, the Newark Office of Film and Television, and Eyes Like Mine. Now, NJPAC would like to offer a land acknowledgement, and the language we're using was created with consultation and guidance from Chief Dwayne Perry of the Ramapo-Muncie Lenape tribe and Oleana Whispering Dove of the Eastern Salagi Algonquins descendants. We're grateful to them for their generosity, wisdom, and labor to craft these words. We, the Lenape, original benefactors of land once ripened and cultivated with attentiveness to the Creator and her ascendancy, express everlasting gratitude to our Creator for the traditional ancestral jurisdictions of the Muncie, Esopus, Canarsie, Capsea, Repuois, Siwanoy, and Weekasqueak, jointly known today as the Ramapo and Nanticoke Lenni Lenape. Let this, our land acknowledgement, be the beginning of our return to unity. Let us be guardians of the water, the air, and the earth, the four-legged, the flyers, the swimmers, the crawlers, the mammal people, and the green. Let us now stand lifting our humanity, enrapturing with Earth's consciousness as guardians of harmony and kindness. I would like to thank our corporate sponsor. Since 2014, PSEG and the PSEG Foundation have partnered with NJPAC to pair screenings of socially engaged films with thoughtful talks featuring activists, artists, academics, journalists, and other experts. We are extremely grateful for their ongoing support. This year, we have added an additional component to our Standing in Solidarity events, and that is poetry. There will be a poetry reading in partnership with Dodge Poetry by award-winning poet Hugo dos Santos, an immigrant from Portugal who grew up in the Ironbound and resides in New Jersey. Hugo is a Luso-American writer and translator, and he's the author of Reduction in Force. He is a winner of the May Sarter New Hampshire Poetry Award, and he's received numerous awards and accolades throughout his career. His poetry and fiction illuminate the beauty, complexity, and struggles of the immigrant experience and urban life. We're so happy to have you, Hugo. Welcome.
Thank you, Donna. And thank you to everyone joining us today. The piece I am going to read for you now is titled Wisdom. The rows of crops are avenues, the day succeeding like a shuffled deck in the deliberate hands of a dealer. The man speaks. Kid, you got a girl? The kid answers, of course. Their wrists are strong, fingers agile, sure under the bruising sun. Let me guess, the man says. She waiting for you? The kid answers, "Yeah, just 2 more years of this, and I'll have enough to marry and buy a farm back home." In the distance, a mule pushes a lonely complaint against the merciless walls of the afternoon air. "You're doing it right, kid," the man says. "Yeah," the kid adds. "I send a little bit of money every month, but I'm saving most of it." Before him, dreams scaffold with abandon, and there is no gravity to the years they encompass. "I have a girl back home too," the man says. "She's a woman now, actually. You'll see. After a while, you won't write as often, but keep sending money. That's the trick." The kid grunts an acknowledgement, but questions are already crowding his mouth. "How long have you worked here?" he asks. 5, no, 6 years, the man answers. "You been back?" the kid asks. "Yeah, but only once because you can't save that way," the man says. The trip is expensive, and the job doesn't wait, so to return home is to lose the small steps that have already been taken, and to leave again is to restart from scratch. The man doesn't say this, but he says it. "And she's waiting for you to marry?" the kid asks. "Of course," the man answers, pulling his eyes away from the work and looking up at the kid, a confusion bordering on nausea overtaking him. He grimaces, puts a hand to his forehead. "I think I stood too quickly," he says. He glances out at the work yet to complete, the rose like a promise curling away from him into the distance of the earth's curvature. Then he looks back at the small, neat patch they have completed, only to turn his eyes from it again, its smallness too much. In the distance, the rows remain. They're longer now, stretching beyond the places his eyes can reach. The kid follows the man's gaze off into the horizon. The kid doesn't look back yet, doesn't know to. They bend at the waist again, their joints aching of a nameless thirst. "Kid, you're doing it right," the man says. And the kid draws a breath to last a lifetime. "Of course." Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much. It is such a joy to have poetry as part of this of our social justice initiative. So thank you so much, Hugo. I am more than delighted and honored to present our moderator for this evening's panel, Dr. Sherry Ann Butterfield, Senior Vice President of Social Impact here at New Jersey Performing Arts Center. Prior to joining NJPAC in September 2024, Dr. Butterfield was Executive Vice Chancellor and Associate Professor of Sociology at Rutgers University, Newark. Dr. Butterfield is a member of several organizations that work for the betterment of Newark and New Jersey, such as the Branch Brook Park Alliance, Glassroots, and several other anchor cultural institutions. Welcome, Dr. Butterfield.
Well, good evening, and thank you, Donna, for that lovely introduction. I'm thrilled that so many of you are able to join us. We know you could be anywhere, and so we really appreciate you joining us this evening. And so this evening's conversation will primarily be a discussion of the immigrant experience and the impact of political, social, and economic challenges on the development of cultural identities. We'll also talk about the larger societal implications of the immigrant experience. Before we get into that conversation, I just want to set the stage with some basic demographic information about immigration in New Jersey. So according to 2023 data USA, and that is the most recent data available, given when the census sends out information for you to fill out, this is why, so that we have up-to-date information. And so New Jersey has the 5th largest immigration population behind California, Texas, Florida, and New York. And when looking at the foreign-born population as a percentage of the total state population, New Jersey moves to number 2, with approximately 23.4% being foreign-born, which is roughly about 2.2 million people. And just in case you were curious, the most common countries of origin in New Jersey in 2023 were India, the Dominican Republic, and Mexico. I asked a few people earlier today if they knew which 3 countries, that those were not the 3 that they picked. So we're all learning today. Now, given the immigrant data that I just shared, it is no surprise that the state of New Jersey has a significant second-generation immigrant population, with 41% of all children having immigrant parents as of 2023. This makes New Jersey second only to California in the proportion of children with immigrant parents. I need to say that clearly, with the proportion of children with immigrant parents. And please know that the data on children of immigrants, I'm putting that in air quotes, it includes both first generation children, which are born abroad, which we have some on this panel, and second generation children born in the US, which we also have on this panel. And so they haven't figured out a good way to disaggregate that data just yet. Working on it. And so thinking about the geographic distribution within New Jersey, immigrant populations are concentrated in particular counties and cities, often correlating with settlement patterns established over time. If you hear music behind me, I apologize. With the Performing Arts Center, there's something happening every time. So the counties that hold the state's largest immigrant populations are Hudson, Bergen, and Middlesex counties. Again, not ones that people often think automatically, but they do. Jersey City is one of the most diverse cities in the United States, with notable Indian, Filipino, Dominican, and Egyptian communities. Patterson is known for its large Peruvian, Dominican, and Arab communities. Edison, which is located in Middlesex County, has one of the largest concentrations of Indian Americans in the state. And the city that we know, love, and for many of us, we call work, play, and live, is Newark, and it has been historically a hub for immigrants of all kinds. And right now, the significant populations are from Latin, Central and South America, West Africa, and the Caribbean. Now, while statistics confirm the second-generation immigrants generally have higher educational and economic attainment than the first generation, this group navigates unique challenges and opportunities related to cultural and racial identity, economic and educational mobility, and other significant issues. And so I'm going to stop there. And with that background, I'm going to move to introducing our amazing panel this evening. So first, I'm asking folks to come off camera and introduce themselves to us. First, Hugo, we're going back to our poet, Hugo Dos Santos. Hugo, please, welcome again.
Thank you, Dr. Butterfield. And thank you again, everyone joining us tonight. My name is Hugo Dos Santos. I am a poet and translator who immigrated from Portugal to New Jersey when I was 10 years old. Growing up in Newark, I learned early on that to be an immigrant is to live between languages, between geographies of memory and hope. Much of my work explores that space, the small everyday moments that reveal how identity is both inherited and constantly remade. My 2019 collection, Then There, looks at the lives of immigrants and their descendants, and the piece I read tonight, Wisdom, comes from that book. It's an allegory, a kind of story that is meant to reveal a hidden moral or meaning. And in it, you heard a conversation between two migrant workers, a younger and an older man, who in their brief exchange mirrored the distances that migration creates between home and work, between the dream and the cost of the dream. I'm honored to be here tonight to talk about what it has meant to me to belong, to build a life across borders, and to find myself in the face of this location.
Thank you so much, Hugo. Thank you again for your poem, which was amazing. And thank you for that beautiful introduction of yourself. Next, we have Adriana Morales Garcia, who's going to introduce herself to us and to our community. Adriana, take it away.
Hello, good evening. My name is Adriana Morales Garcia. I am a New Brunswick resident, and my parents immigrated here from Mexico before, maybe a couple years before I was born. Um, I am currently a Middlesex County college student, and I am pursuing a career in early childhood education. My goal is to work with my community and be a teacher for my town. I work with a lot of community organization groups like Collab Arts and New Brunswick Tomorrow. working as a teacher assistant, so I very much want to be able to incorporate my cultural knowledge of my Hispanic and Latino community with the American culture. And I'm very excited to be a part of this panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Adriana. We really appreciate you being here because we know the importance of the youth for all of the work that we do. And so we really appreciate you joining us here this evening. Next, we have Ana Paula Rodriguez, and she will be introducing herself to us. Ana?
Good evening. My name is Anna Rodriguez. I was born and raised in the city of Newark. I still live in this great city. I am an educator also for the city of Newark, where I teach graphic design. That is my trade, multiple degrees in art and design, as well as in political science. I wrote my first book that was published this year, which is called Voices and Voyages. And it chronicles the lives of 18 Portuguese immigrants and their move from Portugal or other countries that they migrated to prior to coming to the United States looking for the American dream. Thank you. Looking forward to speaking to everyone tonight.
Thank you so much, Anna. We're very much look forward to hearing more about you, your experiences, and your book. They're always exciting. And last but certainly not least, doing important work is Yvonne Salazar. Yvonne?
Hi, everyone. My name is Yvonne Salazar, and I'm the Chief of Staff at La Casa Don Pedro, a social service provider based in the Lower Broadway community in Newark. We serve 50,000 individuals. Many of them are immigrants, many of them are families, women. I've been working in the nonprofit sector for 21 years. I'm a second generation Ecuadorian, married to a second generation Dominican, and we have two boys. They are 7 and 11. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yvonne. Really appreciate you being here and looking forward to the conversation. So I'm asking all the panelists to come to join us back here. And I'm just gonna go into it. And several of you already touched on this, but could you really talk to us about what it means to have one foot in each culture, American and the culture of your family or your home country? There's more I can say, but I'm going to stop there. And Yvonne, since you're already off mute, I'm going to start with you.
Sure. I think for me, I identify really strongly. I mean, my whole story doesn't start unless I think about the immigrant experience. My parents coming here when they were children, thinking about my mother being separated from her grandmother for many years in order to make all of that work. All of my relatives are immigrants, my grandparents, my aunts and uncles. So it's just something I think about constantly, and that kind of, even though I was born here, feeling like you're living in two worlds resonates a lot. Language resonates a lot. My parents raised me in a time where they were trying to assimilate, and so they didn't teach us Spanish. And now I'm trying to reclaim that and trying to infuse that in our home.
And can I do a follow-up on that, Yvonne? Why the reclamation and why now?
Oh gosh, I mean, it seems like something that was my right that I didn't,
Okay.
get to have. And even though I spoke Spanish with my grandmothers, it was really interesting that my parents purposely chose not to speak Spanish to us in our home. They didn't want us to be raised, they didn't want us to have an accent. And I just, as an adult and now as a mom, I think about that and I have to hold both that they were trying their best with what they knew, but that they missed out on something, a part of passing down their culture. And I really want to make sure that I can reclaim that and that I can show that pride for my children.
Great, thank you so much. Anna, I'm going in the way into what you're on my screen.
Sure. I see like the bicultural identity. Obviously, it means that we're moving through two unique, different worlds, and straddling those two cultures creates a distinct sense of self that's shaped by both, but yet we're not really fully accepted by either. So, like one moment, I could be walking into a space that's reserved for my American identity, and then within a minute, an hour, or whatever, walking into another space where is reserved for my Portuguese identity. So we don't we don't have one identity, we have two. And because of it, we have to navigate not just one set of societal expectations or cultural norms, but two. And I feel like this creates a cultural limbo where your sense of identity is constantly shifting. It depends, depending on where you are and with whom.
So speaking to the salience of your identity depending on context.
Right.
Thank you. Coming back around. Hugo?
Yeah, what Anna just said really resonates with me. In many ways, language was the first border for me, you know. I remember living this at school and the dynamics of the bilingual program I was fortunate enough to have access to, and the mainstream program that I was desperate to get into as quickly as possible. And so it created a reality for me where in some places I was Portuguese and others I was American, but never entirely either. Um, Writing in English about that Portuguese life, about immigrant life, was at first kind of a translation of self, right? Where I was trying to create a way where I wouldn't have to lose one language or another, but I could create a third space where both could coexist. And it took me a long time to figure out how to do that in a way that felt true to my experiences. There weren't readily available models out there for how to do that. And luckily, some of that has changed, and we see more and more examples of that, which I'm grateful for. Even if that visibility has, I think, in some cases, created pressures on us that are in response to how we're trying to create those spaces.
Thank you so much. Adriana?
Well, it's very interesting to hear from Hugo and Anna because I also resonate with both of them heavily, especially with Hugo in the language. That it was also something very like one of the first moments of a cultural division for myself. It's really funny because like for Hispanic and Latino communities, it's very common to celebrate and honor and have parties sometimes. And growing up for me, my first interaction understanding that I was a part of a cultural division was when I had a noise complaint from a party and I had to speak to a police officer and translate a conversation between my parents and the officer. And so it's very interesting to hear that that is can be also like a little relatable, but in different situations. And then it that's like that's where really the first few moments and like the first few steps of like understanding, oh, you're part of two different cultures. How can you embrace both and understand that they're different, but they can be the same. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. Thank you for that story of the situation. Powerful, and lots of folks sort of have to figure out how to manage that. So that's actually my follow-up question for all of you. How did you, and anyone can answer in whatever particular order, how did you cope with this reality, right? You had to, language barriers are real, right? How do you learn about a new culture as your family is learning? I mean, how did you, what were the, Hugo, you said there weren't a lot of models out there. There weren't. So how did you all figure out how to cope with the realities that you were confronted with?
I can start. So I feel like I was very lucky. I was raised in the Ironbound, just like Hugo, at a time that the majority of my classmates were either first or second generation children of immigrants or born in other countries. So there was this shared experience that we were able to discuss with one another and try to overcome the challenges that one might have gone through, and someone found the answer that you were able to share and get an answer that you probably couldn't if you were dealing with somebody who wasn't an immigrant or first generation. Another way that I happen to cope, and my friends, because they have a great sense of, is basically humor, believe it or not. That was a way of us dealing with difficult situations And I'm just going to touch really quickly on an experience I had early on. So for my first and second grade, I had one particular teacher. It was the same teacher for both grades. And my last name is Rodriguez. And he insisted that I spell my name with a Q and a Z. So for 2 years, I was forced to misspell my name because he didn't believe that it was a G and an S. Now, my parents didn't speak English enough to come and advocate for the change. And after telling my parents, telling my friends, because there was a level of frustration, even at, first grade and second grade, where I knew how to spell my name even before coming to school, entering kindergarten, that for 2 years I had to misspell my name, knowing fully well it's misspelled. And if I sneaked it in and did spell it correctly, he would mark it wrong, which was frustrating enough. But I remember the humor in having this conversation with other students and my family. So every time I would misspell my name, it would just come up as hearing that little voice that other people were saying, how sad that a teacher can't spell. So that kind of helped me for those 2 years in dealing with the fact that somebody was forcing me to misspell my name. So
Wow, that's a powerful story. Thank you. So anyone else? Yeah, how did you cope with your realities?
Yeah, again, what Anna's saying really resonates with me, and I think the most direct way of answering your question is it was with community, and I felt that before I had a name for it, really. But the part of it that became really clear to me was this feeling where, um, I didn't, and I talked about this earlier. I didn't feel American fully American anywhere. I didn't feel fully Portuguese anywhere, and so my main identifier for me, even back then, was immigrant. And so, regardless of like country of origin or generation, for me, it was that connection that I was creating with people who day in, day out were living and sharing that same space with me. And then my art became a way for me to try to document that in a way that felt real. Um, and even the piece tonight, Wisdom, those two characters are bound by distance, by labor. The work they're doing is really building someone else's dream. um, and this is a lesson that I've had to learn and relearn many times. And so the art has been for me a way of trying to coping with that. And more recently, a form of resistance too, trying to turn that silence into story and some of that erasure into presence.
Thank you so much for that. Yvonne or Adriana, who wants to take it next?
I'll go. Um, for me, I've also been lucky enough to have been raised in a Hispanic and Latino community and be raised with second gen and first gen children like me. I was also very lucky to have a very supportive teachers who may not have been like fully aware of like the social life outside of schools, but always made an effort to encourage students to embrace who they are, embrace where they come from. And I remember like learning that song, like this land is my land, this land is your land. It was very nice to like have that be like the American culture part, like going to school is what helped me cope with dealing with the divide that I had between at home and school and the American and Mexican culture.
Thank you so much. Yvonne?
I would say, I think being second generation, my experience was I think just impacted by that. I mean, I was born here, but I was being raised by a mom who culturally was still in Ecuador, and she raised us very differently. And so even though I had a lot of friends who were doing things like sleepovers and play dates, like we were not doing that, and we were gathering on Sundays and having big family lunches and dinners, and my family, I think, was a huge anchor for me and was our community. But that was hard to kind of, yeah, I think again, like living in two different worlds.
I think one of the takeaways for me from this is the importance of context matters, right? Whether it's your neighborhood or your family, and that helps you get through this trying to figure out where exactly where you all fit in. And that's you growing up, and you all talked a lot about the growing up, and all of us still have growing up to do, but I just want to think a little bit right now about given your life experiences, what you've done up until this point, and couple that with the current political reality that we're in. What does it mean to you now to be an American?
Yeah.
What's Anna?
Yeah. I don't mind being first. So to me, being American obviously is a love of the country and the possibilities it offers to all of us. But it also means holding it accountable when it falls short. I think that's very important. And working to make America better, being part of that, uh, being part of the group that's actually trying to make changes that's beneficial to not just you and your group, but to everyone else. It's also for me, it's about claiming my space and honoring those that came before me and the struggles that they had to give me these opportunities to stand where I stand and the places that I'm able to go to now because of them. And to also be able then to realize you were given these opportunities because of the struggles of your parents, your family, your community, and to look at other communities and help them advance, because America for centuries, that's what it has been. It's bring me your poor, your I'm going to screw up that your huddle masses yearning to breathe free. And as someone who has been given opportunities because of struggles of my family, we should be, I should, and I do believe we all should help others gain those opportunities as well, because there is enough to go around for everyone, but you have to be in the center to help other people. Thank you.
Yeah, that was great. It's not about I get more and you get less. There is enough to go around, and we need to think about this is not a deprivation kind of argument. But Hugo, I see you came off mute. So what does it mean to you today to be an American?
I just figured you were going to call on me next, so I was trying to beat you to the punch. Um, to me, it's less about erasing origins and more about the courage with which to hold complexity, for us to insist that identity can be plural. Um, I identify as an immigrant before all else at this point, and that shapes my idea of America as unfinished in a good way, as still being written by every person who arrives here. Um, and this way of seeing it is something that I take seriously and with the responsibility, that informs the kind of writing I want to do, my life in general, the way I view right and wrong, and also what I'm hoping to leave behind for my kids and others.
That's great. Thank you so much. Yvonne?
So this is, I think it's hard for me to put into words what this means in this moment in time. I think working at La Casa Don Pedro and just being at the front lines of how current policies are affecting families, um, is very heavy. It's very hard. I'm incredibly grateful to be doing the work that I'm doing and to be a part of something positive right now. But I think right now being an American to me is really um, trying to understand policies and trying to connect it to humanity. Policies affect people, and I think this is the first time I've um, truly seen that. I've worked in the nonprofit sector for a long time, but this is the first time I've worked in an organization. Um, where we're working with immigrant families, with mothers who are coming in and just trying to advocate for their families, trying to get services for their families. They're just trying to exist and to improve their lives. And they're just faced with so many obstacles. So I think for me right now, being American is just feels really hard.
Thank you for your honesty, Yvonne. I know you're dealing with a lot. You are holding so many communities together, and we really appreciate the work that you and everyone does at La Casa. So thank you. Adriana, what does it mean for you to be an American in this moment?
It's a heavy question. Um, it's truly kind of hard to also put like a description to what it even to what being an American is. I think a lot of people have not forgotten, but like chosen to kind of dismiss the history of this country. I strongly believe this country was built on immigration. And it doesn't even matter if it was done legally or illegally, because the first immigrants in this country were slaves who were brought here against their will, most likely. And throughout the years, immigration has still become one of the most significant reasons why this economy continues to grow. Um, it's very, it's kind of odd to try to put to what it means to be an American, but I would say it means like someone who is just honoring and embracing their country's history and honoring what it means to be an immigrant, to that it's not a danger and it's not a hardship, it's an effort for a better life. It's an effort to come back and seek refuge from environmental disasters in other countries, from religious persecution in other countries, to, to really just look for that better life here. Hoping, hoping to look for a better life here.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. I think one of the things that we have to figure out how to explain better is that two things can be true at the same time, right? Is that I can be proud of where my family and my culture is from, and to be proud to be living and thriving in this place that we call America. And America, as we know, is built on literally on generations of immigration, right? Countries may change, but the experiences have been not uncommon. And so really want to thank you all for being honest about a tough question, especially in this time about how immigration is getting discussed. I want us to think a little bit, do a little bit personal piece. You all grew up, for the most part, in America with immigrant parents, but America has a particular culture to it as well. Other than in addition to language, how did you negotiate with your families about the things that you wanted to do that were distinctly American? Yvonne sort of got it about sleepovers. That was a big one for lots of people. Like, why would you leave your house to sleep? Sleep here. You sleep here. But how did you negotiate it? That is not always the easiest thing. And I say this because it's tied to one of the things that doesn't get talked about a lot is the mental health of second gens who are caught between these two worlds. Well, first, if you came as a child, as an immigrant child, and then second gens, there's a mental health component that doesn't always get discussed. And so how do you negotiate family and community and outside of those parameters?
I guess we're going in a circle. So, well, for me, in terms of negotiating, just going out with friends and stuff like that, I was pretty much involved in Our Lady of Fatima Church, which is considered the Portuguese church. So we had like the youth group, we had Girl Scouts, and we would do things as part of that group. And the wonderful part of that is a lot of the people that volunteered, because they were all volunteers, were acquaintances or friends of family. So there was an automatic trust built in for 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 me to actually go and go to the movies with a large group of people, or go to New York and go, I was lucky enough to go to many places because of being in Girl Scouting and because of being in the youth group and in the church. Camping, which I do not like, but I did go camping. And so that offered me a great opportunity to go out. One of the big surprises I did have with my parents is when I was in high school and I was choosing which path to go down, what career that I was thinking of doing, I told my parents, who are blue collar workers, that I was going to major in art. And I was waiting for that pushback. And it was minor, to be quite honest. It was like, "You sure you don't want to major in business?" And I'm like, "No, it's going to be art." And the only thing they said after that was okay. So I give them a lot of credit for allowing me to uh, forge my own way in one that they're not familiar. To this day, I don't think they can actually tell you what I do for a living. You know, there's also the ability to sit and have just serious conversations with your parents. And I was lucky enough that my parents were open-minded enough to say, okay, you're going to major in art. And I'm sure in the back of their mind, they're like, "You're going to live with us forever." So, you know, there's that, the established opportunity. And then there's the opportunities you kind of had to make yourself by having these tough conversations with your parents, that they had to have faith in you in knowing what you were doing. Because, you know, my friends and I, to this day, we discuss, like, we didn't have the internet as I'm dating myself. So as you're registering for, you know, classes at Rutgers, your parents couldn't help you. You know, for the most part, you had to do it on your own, which I think for us was actually a great benefit, because we are able to walk into any room and ask questions and get answers, because we didn't have that support. I just didn't, because my parents didn't speak English. So you grew confidence in yourself to walk into these rooms and make things happen, because your parents supported you at home, but they couldn't walk that walk with you.
Thank you. That's we hear that quite a bit, right? How do you teach yourself, right? You, particularly if there's issues around language, you have to teach your parents English in some cases as you're learning, as you're growing up and learning as well. I'm going to change it up. Adriana.
Um, I think for me, it always kind of ties back to school. That was like the most American culture part that was very significant for me. Having my parents find out about parent teacher conferences or recitals, or there's something going on at school and they need a parent to go. That was always like very strange for my parents. Although my mom always made the effort to like to go and to like speak to my teachers to get to know them. It was always also me having to translate because she wanted to be there and embrace it. But it was really funny because I also didn't understand that. I thought this was like a norm, like, oh yeah, this is what you do in school. This is what any school like in other countries is probably the same too. But no, when my mom would explain it to me, I was like, oh, okay, well, now we know. So that's one for me.
Thanks, Adriana. I appreciate that. Yvonne.
Yes, I agree that for me, college was also a huge obstacle. I was the first in my family to go to college, and my parents were very supportive of me going out of state, but the rest of my family could not understand that. I was the oldest daughter. Um, I was the oldest cousin of my generation. I was the oldest. They just could not understand that. And that was a huge cultural difference in our family. And then, as you mentioned too, mental health is a huge, it's hard to see your family. My family was so supportive, so loving. If we needed anything, they would come and fix something in our house, or they would come and help us throw a party. But if I were to say, there's this one family member that's just really struggling with their mental health and we really need to support them, they probably should see a therapist, that would really be looked down upon. And that then you would see the same family not rally and show support. So I think mental health for me is still, I think that's still an issue in my family that I'm constantly trying to advocate for, or to help my family understand what that means, and that everybody can benefit from looking after their mental health.
Yvonne, thank you so much for that. And I know, particularly in a space right now, we're like self-care, and people are like, what? Like, go to school, go to work. Like, I'm like, no, there's a thing about why we need to take care of ourselves. Absolutely. And I'll come back to that college thing in a second, but Hugo?
Yeah, I mean, so many shared experiences here tonight. For me as a young child was kind of, as we've heard, memories, experiences of translating for my parents and feeling in those situations of having to take on an adult role, and having to translate words, parts of conversations that I myself at that age wasn't always fully understanding. And I process that now as an adult, as a parent, and the meaning of those. And then later on, again, as other panelists have mentioned, I really benefited as a product of Newark Public Schools. I really benefited from a number of adults in those buildings who really went to work every day and took seriously the responsibility of helping me, helping kids like me. And I ended up in college because I had a guidance counselor that terrified me, and she would show up to my first period class and call a number of us out into the hallway and say, "You're going to do this tonight, and you're going to write this essay, and you're going to get me this info, and tomorrow I will be here again." And she was 90 pounds, but we were terrified of her. We said, "Yes, anything." We showed up on Saturdays to take, the SAT. Why do you have to go to school tomorrow? My teacher told me I have to. I have to go take a test. And again, like, those are experiences I lived, and only now do I process them. And I have so much, I'm just so grateful for those adults and those people who showed up in the way they did, because the difference it meant to me and other kids like me.
Absolutely. I think as we get older, we appreciate what we didn't realize we should have appreciated then, right? And so the fact that you had someone, you're like, I'm going to school on a Saturday without questioning, and look where it got you. Yvonne got to go away to school. I still have to talk to parents about convincing them to let their child leave home to go to college, right? And or not or, and if they're helping with family responsibilities, that becomes even more challenging, right? If you're helping with entrepreneurship is big in immigrant communities, right? So if you're helping with stores, or if you're helping with siblings and um, grandparents or parents, that struggle is a little different. Um, and so you all managed to escape the intergenerational conflicts, did you? Other than sleepovers? No, exactly. What were the
There
big
were
ones?
some of those too, but I think I want to highlight the other stuff.
Because those, and so I asked that question because why are these experiences important for us to talk about publicly? Why do we need to have these conversations in a public forum? There's so much similarity among all of you. You grew up in different households, some of you grew up in similar communities, but why is it important for these stories to get out into the public sphere?
Well, I think, and Hugo touched this, is that our stories matter and storytelling matters, because it fosters an understanding. It fosters empathy because we start connecting the dots. Well, I had that experience as well. Um, just as important, it preserves history, our history, and it also shapes the future. And in a world where there's some people that are looking to erase or even diminish our existence, sharing our immigrant stories becomes what I feel as both an act of remembrance, because we're storytelling, and also an act of resistance, because we're not going anywhere. These are our stories, these are our experiences here.
100%. This too is America, right? Immigrant labor and creativity have built this state, this country. And right now we're living in a moment where those narratives are often sidelined. They're under direct attack. And so I think anything we can do to create space for them, to fight for their space, and to advocate for why they too are part of the American story. As you mentioned earlier, it's not a zero sum game. And so I think the more we can do to get out that message, to develop that message and make sure it's reaching everywhere, that creating space for other stories, other voices does not diminish anybody else's. In fact, it only creates more, because our rights are inextricably tied to the rights of everyone else. Every group's rights, each group's rights are tied to other groups' rights. And so, in fighting for the rights of others, what we're actually doing is fighting for our own rights.
Thank you, Hugo. Yvonne, Adriana?
I love what Anna said too about it being a form of resistance. That really resonates with me, and just preserving our history and being able to pass that down to future generations, to be able to have conversations with my children, even though they're young. I think all of that is really important.
Absolutely. I also agree with my panel. Remembering being able to, like Anna said, having these stories, being able to share them, because these are not experiences that are not going to exist in the future. There are people who are going to be coming and going and learning, and we're going to be able to tell them, this can happen, this has happened, and this will happen, right? And creating a space where we're able to share with one another that we are all just humans. We are part of humanity, and we're all on a floating piece of rock, but we are all together.
Oh, that we're on the rock. And so, the one thing I would add to this is that it's important, the storytelling, absolutely, our humanity, and also for folks to understand we're living in a time of so much, there's a lot of information coming at us from all sides, right? And the beauty of when Anna and I grew up is that you didn't get as much because social media didn't exist, right? And so the narrative is important because there's so many counter narratives. And I saw someone put in the chat about the importance of voting, right? Folks need to understand what they're really voting for, and what the lives really look like is about how you vote and how that matters. And so we all matter. And at the end of the day, we're all looking for the same thing. We all want healthy communities. We want our families to be whole and healthy. We want to be able to go to school and get a job, and be able to continue to raise ourselves and our communities in a way that is thriving and flourishing. And so these experiences that you all have are both similar and dissimilar from folks, and there's nothing wrong with some difference, but the basic level of humanity is important, that we get your stories out, and thinking about what else absolutely needs to happen. And so as you think about what are some of the larger policy implications of this work, I mean, Yvonne, you're dealing with this every day. What are some of the kinds of changes that we want to be able to say that my life really needs to, and the ways in which we've lived can influence and should influence policy moving forward?
Gosh, that is a huge question. I'm going to try my best to answer that, but I think, we really need to just overhaul our immigration policies and just overhaul, how we're um, making that process accessible for individuals and for families. And I think also just kind of pushing back against stereotypes of, undocumented versus documented. I mean, the process of being an immigrant and coming in as an immigrant is a lot more nuanced than that. And the families that we're serving are coming in under lots of different circumstances. They have temporary work permits and they have temporary social security numbers, and these are just concepts that people aren't as familiar with. There's lots of ways that people are coming in documented. So it's just, I think, kind of on my mind right now is less policy, although there's lots of things that we can do about policy, but kind of pushing back against the stereotype of what an immigrant is.
Thank you, Yvonne. I really appreciate that. Adriana?
I'm sorry, would you mind repeating the question once more?
How do our lives can potentially, have policy implications? Like what is it about our experiences that that could really influence how people think. I mean, to Yvonne's point, to think about immigrants and create different ways of working with us or not.
Um, well, yeah, I believe that trying to be informed and speaking, trying to find a voice for the community, being able to go to like holding community events and being able to speak about what is going on within ourselves. Like are there is there anything that we feel that could embrace our community, whether that's the actual city that we live in or culturally, being able to also ask organizations and seeking the information of how to adjust, not necessarily conform, but be informed of what it means to hear about these stories that you don't like Yvonne said, there are stories that we aren't familiar with that even other immigrants might not have gone through or have a shared experience with, but it is something that is still going on that is very real. And we should be able to hear about that and help each other for for making it so that this is all a shared space and there's no fear.
No fear. That's big. Thank you. Hugo?
I mean, Yvonne said it beautifully, and I have so much respect for the work she's doing and that La Casa is doing, and so many other organizations too. I think the short answer to your question is policies need to reflect the full humanity of all people, full stop. For me, the way I've tried to build that into my work is with this belief I hold that stories can be a great way to build empathy, and that's an opening for conversations that aren't always easy. And I think that too can be part of policy change. I hope that too can be part of policy change by making stories heard and bringing those stories out to the public, be it written, delivered in a community space. But that in doing that, we can begin to shift the moral imagination of what's possible and what a place can be.
Powerfully said. Thank you so much. Anna?
I believe in terms of the policy is actually going straight to the policymakers and humanizing the people that they're affecting, because as Yvonne said earlier, these are real people, these are real families, and these are real communities that you're impacting on. It's very easy to say them, them over there. But once you speak to someone and there's a story, and it's a mother who's just trying to raise her child and needs health care or whatever the case may be. Now it's not them. Now it's Maria. Now it's Tony or Pedro or whoever. It's harder to separate that, right? Because when it's them, you don't know them. You have no idea their story. But once you're one on one and having these conversations with people that might resonate with them, because at the end of the day, we're all seeking the same thing. We're looking to make sure our families are fed, that they're healthy, that they're educated, that there's opportunities, whether you're a white person in Kansas, an African American person in Newark, or a Portuguese person in Newark, it's the same thing. And it's not just in the United States, it's across the world. We want to take care of our own. We're not asking for more, we're just asking for equal.
Thank you so much for that. And I really appreciate it. Um, I'm actually going to take moderator's license because we have a lot of good questions around places. And so we had some that were submitted ahead of time. We have some that have been submitted since. And so I'm actually going to move us to really thinking about some of the questions that have come up, and then we'll after that we'll end. You all get some time to give us your last thoughts, but some of these questions are on point for things that we've talked about, so I just wanted to get them in now. You all okay with that? Okay, great. So one question, just going to read it as was written. What unique perspective or insight do you feel that your immigrant background allows you to bring to your field or community that someone who hasn't shared that experience might miss? And what contribution has that perspective enabled you to make? Anyone can jump in.
I'll jump in. um, so, interesting experience that I had as an educator, um, and in this particular high school that I work in, I'm actually one of the few people that are Portuguese, and we do have Portuguese as well as Brazilian. And I remember having a student who wasn't my student, but I saw her in the cafeteria. She had just moved from Brazil, full culture shock, sitting there crying. And, and I kind of had a feeling that I knew why she was crying. And I kind of went up to her and she didn't know I spoke Portuguese. And I'm like, "Are you okay?" And I spoke to her in Portuguese. And she kind of looked at me like, you speak Portuguese?" And I'm like, "Why don't you come with me?" So I kind of took her out of that environment. And I'm like, "Are you okay? Do you need something? Do you not feel well? Do you want to go to the nurse?" And she said yes. And I'm like, and she's just talking to me as we walk towards the nurse. And she's like, "This is very difficult for me." And I told her, I could imagine, because now you have to learn the language and you have to make friends. And then I told her, "I just want you to know that you're not alone. That at any point throughout this, if you need someone, even if it's to go into the room and cry, you look for me and you ask for me." Because I was able to communicate with her in her language and kind of reassure her that you're not alone. I'm sure she felt lonely at that moment. And now you see her, she speaks really, she speaks English very well. She has tons of friends, and she always gives me this like heart. We don't speak much, but she looks at me and she gives me the smile all the time and says hello, but it's just this very like connected smile, like, thank you, without saying thank you. And I was able to be able to connect with her because of my feeling alone sometimes in certain rooms where you don't feel like you belong because you don't look like everybody else, where you don't have the credentials that they have, or you're in the process of getting these credentials. And having a very ethnic name like Rodriguez really, I walk into a room, people are already making a judgment of me. I'm not even talking about the physical, I'm talking about just based on my name. So, it's good to know that there's somebody there in case you need them. And I felt that my background being in first generation or second generation American came in handy at that very specific time for that specific student.
That's a great story, Anna. Thank you so much for that. Any of the rest of you want to respond about how your background has facilitated an experience or experiences? Adriana, you're off mute. You're up.
Yes. Um, it's funny because just like Anna, I want a career to be an educator, and for the past couple of years, I've done a lot of work involving myself as an education assistant or a counselor, and m- being part of a community that is very heavily Hispanic and Latino, and having my own understanding of what that means with also being American, that shared experience is unique to myself, but it's a shared experience with my community. It's a way to be able to relate to the kids that I'm working with, being able to help them like, oh, do you prefer to understand this in English or in Spanish? Being able to help them navigate what it is to be in two different culture shocks, and try to find that balance between the both of them. It, as an educator, I think that's also very shared for everyone.
Thank you so much, Adriana. Hugo or Yvonne, responses to that?
Yeah, I can jump in. I think I would just really support what we just heard in terms of finding ways of being a bridge builder. Not everyone has had the personal experience of being an immigrant, but just about everyone's had an experience of being a newcomer, of joining a group that's already formed. And I think being able to create those bridges for people, showing warmth, showing empathy, and then I think making sure that in any room I'm in, that I am extending to folks like that, um, not only for their sake, not only for my sake, but I think for the sake of the space that I'm in, and ensuring that to whatever extent I have reach, I am creating spaces that are welcoming of folks. Um, and that for me is directly informed by my experiences as an immigrant, and by what I believe can be done if we again like create spaces for different experiences.
Thank you for that. Now I have a follow-up question for that. Yvonne, I'm coming back to you, but for a second. Hugo, do you feel a need to be that bridge builder in all the spaces you inhabit? And I
So
ask that
that's
because young people will say to me, I shouldn't have to educate people every single time.
100%.
But
And
then there's the counter to that, right?
yeah.
So can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, and for me, it comes naturally at this point in my life because it doesn't feel like something I have to do. It's something I want to do. If I believe what I say and I want to live that way, and it doesn't mean that I'm perfect all the time or that I hit it out of the park every time, but it means that whenever I'm conscious that someone in that corner over there may be feeling that feeling I felt as that first kid walking into that fifth grade classroom, that I'm doing right, and that I'm doing what I believe is right, which is creating that space. And again, if we believe that it isn't a zero sum game, I think modeling what that looks like, modeling that it costs nothing, and that the payoff is so great, has made it feel for me less like a labor. And I think in the spaces I'm in, made me prouder of those spaces, that they are welcoming of other folks.
Thank you so much for that. And Yvonne, you're like, this is my job every day. What else do you want me to say? But thinking about how has your experiences and the work that you do at La Casa impacted how you deal outside of those spaces?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's impossible for me to go places and not want to like hand out business cards at some point. Like if I'm interacting with community members that I feel like could benefit from our work, it's it's really hard for me not to, because I'm so proud of the work that we're doing. Um, but I think also thinking about my experience as being second generation Ecuadorian and now being in a position of being a supervisor and a manager and being able to mentor other staff that are younger. I didn't have that. I never had a Latina supervisor. Um, and so I just take that responsibility really seriously and try to really think about what I would have needed in a mentor and try to provide that to our staff. And it's an interesting responsibility too, because when you're working with a lot of um, folks who do also have an immigrant background and who are going through their own experiences and their own traumas, saying that, not to bring that to the office is impossible. And so kind of navigating that day in, day out and creating space for people to feel what they feel, and also be a mentor, at work. I really welcome that. And it's just it's an honor to be able to do that.
Thank you so much. I love it. It's an honor to do that. Um, you talked about young people, so I'm actually going to read there. We have a couple questions around young people in particular. And so, how do you perceive the tension between assimilation and cultural preservation influencing the emotional and social well-being of first and second generation immigrants, particularly among the youth who are attempting to define their identities? They're trying to find themselves. And so how do we help them negotiate that space, especially right now?
I can go. I'll speak first.
I
Um,
put the youngest on the spot, but you did it. So there you go. Thank
I think one of the most powerful tools we can use is technology. Every youngster out there has access to technology, has access to social media, and having um those outlets of advocation for your community and for immigration and for what is going on currently around your world and your state, it's one of the most efficient ways to really reach out to the youth and to have them kind of like talk about it. Also bringing it up in schools, of course, and hosting like forum, like I guess a forum in a way where you're taking students and also you, I was gonna say using them, but that doesn't sound right. But having them also be able to be informed and to teach to other youth, repeating that cycle of we will teach and we will continue to teach, and what we teach will not be forgotten because we will have that reminder of this will follow up, kind of, right?
Thank you.
If I could just add to that,
Of course,
as an
Anna.
educator, we just had a wonderful Hispanic presentation where all the Hispanic students from all different countries did dance, read poetry. It was really beautiful to see. I did have one student who I would have never in a million years expected him to actually participate, and he's on stage and he's dancing, and in the pride that was seen, I think having those opportunities to showcase where you came from to others also kind of helps in that area. I think it's just there is pride and it should be shown and it to everyone. And I think with students, students that are not part of that background, that cultural identity, also learn and they were rooting their friends and they were celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month, and they're not Hispanic, but they were enthusiastic about being there and actually learning from their peers about their backgrounds. So I think it's important to also have that celebration of showing that celebration of how beautiful these cultures are and their contribution to the world.
Thank you so much for that, Anna. Hugo or Yvonne, anything you want to contribute to that?
I had to give Yvonne a chance to jump in here if she wanted to, but I think for me, it's striking a balance between teaching, leading, and listening and empowering. And we talked a little bit before. We touched on intergenerational tension, and I think we need to be cognizant of that too. Just as we've had in some cases, our generation to fight for space and to fight for change when the older generation has asked us to listen and asked us to do it that way. The world is many things. And I think one of the really powerful things we could do is empower our youth, that they do have many of the solutions. Gianna talked about communicating. I think they can speak directly to their communities and to their generation much more directly, clearly, and powerfully than we can. And I think we need to be comfortable enough to recognize that and empower that and create space for it.
Thank you so much. Yvonne, did you?
No, I think I echo everyone else and just I think I want to learn from younger generations more than I want to give advice at this point because as I get older, I'm in my 40s now, and I am feeling like there is there is wisdom that I can learn from younger generations. I think they're growing up so connected to technology and the internet and social media, and they can navigate those things faster. They can navigate technology faster. And I think that's yeah, just a unique position to be in. I also remember not having things like the internet and email and things like that, and just looking at my kids being able to access technology so quickly. So yeah, I'm really curious in terms of what youth feel are important, feel are urgent, and I want to hear from them in terms of what matters most to them.
Absolutely. I mean, our young people are where we're going. I think the power of intergenerational work is the lessons that we've learned to have conversations. So everyone needs to be active listeners in this, right? And so how do we support from behind as we share what we've learned, right? And the things that may not have worked when we did it may work now. We don't know, but I think it's important for us to impart, at least have that exchange of information about what did and did not happen, and how we can move forward. Um, this is a question that for I said, for those of you who are parents, are there things you're doing differently with your kids when it comes to language and culture in order to help them navigate our country than differently than your parents raised you? So Yvonne, you had already talked about Spanish. Is there anything else that you all, those of you who have kids, and I don't necessarily just mean birth kids, like you're raising kids, those of you educators are also raising kids. So are there things you're doing differently with the kids that you are either in your household or the ones that you work with, in order to help them navigate our country right now? It's different than when we grew up. So what are you doing? Uh-oh, did we stump
I'll
you?
go
Okay.
first. Um, well, I work at a daycare, so the youth that I work with is still learning to speak and walk. Um, but it's really interesting because the daycare that I work at is at a high school. So the children that I'm working with are of these teenagers, their moms, and being able to hear how they became moms, hearing them that they're not even from this country, they come from a different country. Their babies are really their only family. It's important to be able to understand that there's also another language barrier there. They're in school learning, trying to learn English or trying to navigate their identity there as well. And for me, working with these babies, it's mostly just encouraging them to speak, to just say mama or like the smallest of words, but also allowing them to dance to some like hip hop or like Baby Shark or listen to the ABCs and one, two, threes in Spanish and English. And for me, that's my perspective.
Thank you so much, Adrian. Appreciate it. Hugo, Anna, Yvonne.
Go ahead, Hugh.
You sure? Okay. For me, I mean, if you walked into my house now, it's a very different household from the one where I grew up. And I grew up in a very loving home. But I think just how my role as a parent is different in this space. Dynamics are very different than the ones I had with my parents. And I've struggled at different times with that. Is the right thing? Is that not the right thing? Because, I was very much raised in many ways to be seen, not heard, and to listen and to follow. And I get why. I get why. My parents grew up under a fascist regime. Like it was out of safety. One of my grandfathers was killed by the secret police. So they lived that in a very real way. And it's so interesting now again to process so much of that now as a parent in this moment, in a different land, in a different language. And so one of the things I'm trying to practice as a parent is to really let go of the need to be right, to let go of the need to have order, and to teach particularly my daughters about giving them the room and the courage with which to speak up, advocate for themselves, advocate for others around them. And being really real with you, it makes some days in this house really hard. I live with some beautiful, very strong-headed little people. But I am also so proud of the people they're becoming when I see them step into those roles with their friends and their circles. And so that for me gives me hope.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that honesty. It is not hard raising kids ever. But when you also do it against the backdrop of how you were raised, it can be challenging. Anna?
Well, I don't have children. I do have a furry child, and I speak Portuguese to her, and I do yell at her sometimes. But as an educator, I really try to change the language of certain students when the conversation is putting down your ethnicity, and that where you come from or your parents are a certain way, and I'm like, nope, no, you can't use that language here. You have to understand you have a great opportunity. There's a uniqueness in you. It's really changing the mindset that it's a negative thing. No, it's a superpower, and I think all of us could agree to that. That there's this ability to see the world in a different way. And okay, maybe your parents, all our parents at some point are stuck at a certain era and believe at a certain thing, and that's okay because it's an opportunity to learn, right, about what worked or didn't work at that time. So it's really about taking a step back and not being negative. I very much push my kids to be positive mindset. And I think with immigrants, because if you're picked on, if you're made fun of, it's easy to fall into that. Yeah, they're right. I'm an idiot. I don't know. Like that. No, you're not an idiot. You're learning, and that takes time. And then to see the growth as you go through the years with these students is really beautiful, actually.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Yvonne, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think just also talking about, trying to teach a skill to your children that you weren't taught yourself. So, just like Hugo was saying in terms of like being supportive of his daughters, I try to create safe spaces for my kids to talk about their emotions. And that's not anything I was taught in my home, or that anger isn't okay. It's a healthy emotion, and understanding what that means if you were raised in a home where you weren't allowed to like talk back or raise your voice or anything like that. And creating safe spaces for that. And so you're kind of trying to teach your children a skill and also trying to teach yourself because I wasn't taught that. But yeah, I love what Anna said about just creating positivity, being able to talk about that with children. Because I think for myself too, my parents were focused on survival, safety. They worried about scarcity a lot. My mom still worries about food running out, and um, and it's something that will always be with her. And it's something I have to be mindful of, and something that I'm always thoughtful of. And so it's just yeah, the things that are passed down and the things that are generational.
That's really important. Thank you, Yvonne. I mean, we have Hugo and gender stereotypes and breaking that up, and you talk about, and you all in different ways talked about the importance of safety. And safety for immigrant parents is different than usually for their children. Safety for them, did you make it home from school okay? Did you make it home from work? Did you, all your body parts working, all of these things. Safety for us now is different. It feels different, it looks different, and it sounds different. And so, that intergenerational mix is also a little different, right? And some people, like grandparents, are like, what are you talking about? They made it home, they're fine. Are they fine? Right. And so, and Yvonne, I'm thinking about when you talked about mental health earlier, about how we do or don't talk about it. Um, and so that's something that I think is a space that we're still working in and through, about what does safety feel like in this time. And it's not, most of the time we're not even necessarily just talking about physical safety, mental and emotional safety, right? And the more that we do that. I have a little time. I want to know if we can get to a couple more questions. And so there's one, as a representative of a white community trying to be far more understanding of all, how do we get your stories out? These stories have a huge impact on the way white brothers and sisters vote, how they support particular politicians, how they join with communities of color to make a difference, etc. And how do we do this? What we're doing right now tonight, how do we do more of this? Thoughts?
Just by doing it, taking the initiative, not waiting for someone else to do it, right? So if you're really interested in making a change or helping your community or helping another community, I'm sure La Casa Don Pedro would welcome volunteers to come and help. It's not pushing it off to someone else. It's you doing it yourself. It's actually being proactive in believing that you want to make a change and be helpful to actually be helpful and make a change.
Thank you, Anna. Anyone else? I see you thinking.
I'd like to reiterate on the technology, being able to share this live here on different social media outlets, having people not like shove it in their face or anything, but like make it a point that this information is here. This information is here for a reason, and here is the reason. So let's talk about it. You know, being able to sit down and have a moment to have the empathy to hear these stories and want to, like Anna said, take the initiative to just do something about it. Reaching out to your community, like organizations or any like government authority that you would like to question, ask them like, how can I also be more informed? Who can I reach out to? What public works are out there that I can look into that can help benefit a community?
Thank you, Adriana. I really appreciate that. Yvonne?
This made me think also about just what stories are out there. I mean, I do think it's so important for us to, you know, and to make sure these stories are a part of history, today's stories. But I think, you know, just thinking about authors and artists who have already made sure that different cultures are represented in books. And you know, I remember it took me until going to college, so I didn't learn this in high school or elementary school, but I went to college and then I read Sandra Cisneros' House on Mango Street, or just all of these authors that I didn't have access to. And that was, you know, 20 something years ago. Like these stories do exist in terms of the immigrant experience, in terms of the Latino cultures and what that is like to grow up in the US. Um, so I think it's also remembering that those stories are out there too.
Thank you so much. You go, Anna. We'll have to begin.
Yeah, I can jump in here. I think all of these are great, and I think one of the best things we can do, and by we I mean folks who are looking to get more involved, is not feel like you have to fix all the things all at once, and to think instead, well, what's one thing I can do this month? I can attend a webinar like this. Next month, I can find another one, and I can make sure that I register for that. I can make sure that my support is going in the direction of the causes I believe and want to support. What Yvonne was saying, you know, you could buy a book. You can go online and find organizations working with migrants, refugees, displaced families. And you don't have to, you know, figure out how to, again, solve all the problems affecting those communities, but think, what's one thing I'm going to do this month? Is it showing up on a Sunday morning or a Saturday afternoon? Is it sending a $5 donation if that's something I can do? Is it buying a book? Is it, again, registering for a free event that can show support? Is it showing up to a free event that might be happening on a Thursday evening? And yes, my schedule is crazy and I have to be up at 5 in the morning, but I can do this one thing, this one night, this month. And I think if we can all just find one thing we can do one month and continue to grow that out, that has a compounding effect that can be really powerful.
Can I just add one more thing?
Of course.
I think it's also very important for us to vote for the individuals that stand with the immigrants, with the policies that we believe are important for change. And that means going out and knocking on doors and educating people, or sending emails if we're going the technology route. Or I think that's very important because these are the policymakers, or they will be the policymakers. So taking a moment, we are going to have an election in about 2 weeks or so, for governor. And you know, depending on which way you choose to go to their website, read what they're about. If you're not certain which way you're going to go and speak to the candidate. I'm sure they'll be more than happy to speak to you regarding any questions you may have. But don't lose sight that you do need to be an active member of society to make this change. And by voting is a big one.
Thank you so much, Anna. You went where I wanted to go, so thank you. We're only one of two states having a gubernatorial election this year, so please exercise your right. We are out of time, but I do want to give the panelists, don't kill me, Donna. If there's anything left that you want, one thing you want us to leave with tonight that you haven't already said, let us know. Let me know right now. Anything?
Of course, I'm going to go really quickly. I'm sorry. I just think
Right.
also it's important, again, talking about civic engagement is for the first generation, the immigrants, the second generation to run for office. I think that's very important, to take these leadership roles that play an important part in changing our society for the better. And so, lose the fear. Why not you to run for the Board of Education if you believe in certain things that need to get done for the benefit of our children. It's important to bring these unique perspectives into the policy making because our experiences are different, and it benefits not just the immigrant society, it benefits the broader American society. So I'm a big believer that we need to run for office and take those leadership roles. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna. And so I'm wrapping up before I get fussed with, because we are over time, but I just want to thank all of our panelists. You all have been amazing. Thank you for sharing your stories, yourselves. This is a personal story. We don't often do this in these spaces, but it's really important that people hear from you so we understand what we mean when we say things like, well, do I support immigrants? Well, there are multiple ways of being immigrants. And at the end of the day, we all want the same things for our families. And someone said earlier, and I wrote it down, we're all working to make America better. And we can only do that collectively. So thank you. And we're going to continue to claim our space. We're going to continue to display our humanity for all to live and experience. So thank you all so much. We are indebted to you for sharing yourselves with us. Thank you. And with that, Donna, I turn it back over to you.
Thank you. Oh my goodness, this was fantastic. I so appreciate each of your generosity of heart that you shared, and of course, your intellect and wisdom really informing us on this very important topic. So thank you on behalf of NJPAC. And of course, thank our audience and all your great comments in the chat. They are beautiful. That's almost content for another book, Hugo. I don't know. The chat comments are just wonderful. So I wanted to just remind everyone what's coming up next. As we know, these panels are monthly. And next month in November, the panel will be in person. And our focus is men's health. Parentheses, why men don't go to the doctor. And how to be an advocate for good health. So we're going to have a dynamic panel in November. It'll be on November 17th. It's a Monday at 6 p.m. in person at NJPAC. We will also have resource tables from a number of different agencies that will provide testing and material so that you can really leave informed, moving on to the next step. And of course, we're a performing arts center, so we have to invite you to our Moody Jazz Festival, which starts next month. We have Omar Sosa Quartet, Arturo Sandoval, Carlos Varallo, jazz jams, represent. And of course, if you're a member, you get a 15% discount and also a special gift. So please join us next month in person. And we look forward to continuing to hear from you and to be able to explore what social justice really means connected to the performing arts. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a great evening. Thank you.